Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to link two samples and then run an analysis on them. So by linking our samples, we're connecting them within the software, so every report that we run will report data on both of the samples side by side. So again, this is really handy if you're looking at time 1, time 2, or if you're looking at Spanish-English samples, or maybe even different contexts. So I'm going to open two samples that come with the software in the lesson samples, SAM, Dr. DeSoto pre and post. And then we have our samples here. First thing I'm going to do is link them. You can link by the double bubble or up at the top where it just says link. So I'm going to go ahead and link them. Okay, and then you can adjust this. So if you wanted to link samples, and then you could push open here and then you could grab them there, but I already opened them, so that's already done. And then I'm just going to switch these around. So let's put SAM pre here. That's going to be time 1. So this was his sample before the response to intervention. And then post is here, time 2. You can edit these labels, but time 1 works really well for this context. But you might want to label those as English, Spanish, whatever you want those labels to be. We're going to be thinking about the first speaker, and we're going to base our comparison on same number of total words. So we hit link over here, and it's saying that they are linked. So everything we're going to run on both samples. So let's go do a database comparison. So I'm going to go up to the database menu, select database samples and settings. So now we're going to pick which samples from the SALT reference database we're going to use to compare SAM's data. So the only thing just conceptually that can be a little confusing is you have to do this twice. So it says select database samples for SAM pre. So okay, well, I'll go ahead. This is what we're going to select for the sample that was taken before his intervention started. So it pulled in from our header, narrative story retell, subgroup is Dr. DeSoto, age match plus or minus 6 months. There's 79 samples that match that criteria. And then step 3, to equate the samples by length, we're going to go same number of words. I'm also going to keep my standard deviation interval to 1, but that can be adjusted. Okay, so then that narrowed it down to 34 samples, but a good amount. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, now we're going to do the same exact thing for the second sample. So this was the sample collected after the weeks of intervention. Again, it pulled in from our header, narrative story retell, Dr. DeSoto. Let's do plus or minus 6 months. He's a little bit older. 55 samples. And then we're going to equate the samples by total, same number of total words. 27 samples. Okay, so now we've selected our database. Let's go ahead and run the standard measures report in our overview section. So we need to select a report based on. So we're going to do measure driven. So that's SALT is going to kind of automatically either use the entire transcript or equated by length. So I'm just going to take measure driven. And it's calculating the values in real time. And now it's going to calculate the values again for that second sample. So it takes just a minute to run these. Okay, and then after that, we will get our report with time 1, time 2. So here's our standard measures report, very similar to if they were not linked. So we're going to have the top has all of our header information from time 1, time 2. So first time he was 12 years, 1 month. He's in 6th grade. Second time he was 3 months later, 12, 4, and in 6th grade. Doing the same thing. So our language measures are on the left, and then time 1, we get the actual numeric value for the measure, and then just the standard deviation, plus or minus. And then we bump over to the next column, time 2 with the measures and the standard deviation information there. So again, as just like we do with the regular analysis, we might want to look at those areas that are highlighted in gray, meaning that those measures are at least 1 or more standard deviations away from the mean, the database mean. So we can look at time 1, he had maybe a couple little unintelligible words. Time 2, that's not even highlighted. So he was 100% intelligible. He did the narrative scoring scheme. They scored that. So that one is an analysis that looks at the structure and content. It's a rubric. So 17 on the first one, but that bumped up to a 26. So that's a great amount of growth there. So his content of his narrative was better. If we look at his mean length of utterance, he had 8.02 mean length of utterance the first time, which was negative 1.63 below the database mean. And his MLU bumped up a little bit, so he's just a little bit, one standard deviation below the mean, but that was also good growth. So as you can see, as we go through, we can look at the changes of time 1, time 2. Mean verbs per utterance also went up, and his SI, that's another analysis that looks at clausal density, that one also went up. So these would be all great things to report, that these improved. And then if we scroll down to the bottom, it looks like his semantics, that's all, that we're going to kind of skip over that section. That looks pretty good there. And then for verbal facility, his words per minute looks fine. Pausing looks fine. Mazes, so those are the repetitions, revisions, false starts, filled pauses, actually increased. So that might be kind of interesting. So the first one, it was 18% of total words were contained in a maze. And that second one, it was 22%. So we could think about, well, maybe he had kind of more robust language. He told a better narrative, but maybe had a little bit harder time being very fluent about it. And errors were not an issue for him. So let's go look at a couple more reports in the database menu. I'm going to pull up the verbal facility report. So if we go under verbal facility, and then this is the verbal facility summary. And I'm going to take the default measure driven. Okay. And then we're reading the report the same way. So we've got the measures on the left. Time 1 is the second column over, and time 2 is that third column. So let's see what was highlighted here, and can we pick up on a pattern? He had a few more pauses that second time. More total pause time in seconds. And if we go down to the maze summary section, so total maze words was 120 the first time, 150 the second time. So we're going to go keep scrolling down here. The total maze components, so this kind of breaks up the mazes to kind of figure out what's going on. So he had, if we look at kind of the same pattern. So revisions, so that's where they're kind of repeating what they're saying, but they're revising it using different words. He had 19 the first time, and that bumped up to 26. So he's revising his phrases. So again, kind of indicating maybe more difficulty with telling the narrative. And then repetitions, part, word, and phrase. That looks pretty similar. And then if we go down to filled pauses, we had 19 single word filled pauses, and that stayed about the same. So, maybe we're not overly concerned about that, but maybe that phrase revision, that's kind of informing what's happening there. And we can kind of explain that. The other thing I'll point out, let's go to the quick look. I'm going to take the default there. Okay, and then this again, time 1, time 2. So this might be nice to take into a meeting with parents and school staff and so forth. So instead of reporting the data with lots of stats and very specific numbers, it just looks at the measures in terms of a strength. Was it within normal limits, or was the skill a relative weakness? So if we look at this time 1, we noticed that narrative scoring scheme, the structure was a weakness. It's not anymore. It was in the normal range. Same thing for mean length of utterance. Weakness continued to be weakness, but we know we had some growth there. The SI also moved over to within normal limits. So again, just to demonstrate, this can be a nice way to just kind of report in a very informal way your measures. Okay, hopefully that gives you a good sense of how to link to samples and run a database menu. Keep in mind, you can run any report from the database menu with that side-by-side data, and also the Analyze menu if you wanted even more information on time 1, time 2. Thanks for watching.